Well, last week was a shortened week of 6 Masters, but fortunately tonight we've got all of the action here as we kickstart play day number 11. My name is Xenox. Joining me tonight, of course, is the lovely Dev Marta. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, yeah, great to get back into 6 Masters. Had a bit of a week off last week. We've had some pretty crazy upsets in the meantime, and we're really getting to that end of the season where anything can happen. There's still a lot of movement possible about who's going to get those top 4 playoff spots. So really tonight we'll be telling for how things are going to end up.
Yeah, for certain. We was talking off air for probably almost an hour about the many different possibilities of the way tonight can go, tomorrow night, etc. We want to hear, though, your possibilities of how you think these games are going to go. Of course, the socials down below, get involved, get on those poll votes, and let us know how you think these matches are going to play out. But Dev, last week it was a bit different, of course, only playing the Playday 9. So Playday 10 has been, of course, rescheduled for the end of next week after Playdays 13 and 14.
Yep, and so we still have just a couple more games to go, 2 more playdays. This week we'll have 2 best of 2s tonight, and looking to get pretty close in terms of who's going to make those top 4. Like I was alluding to earlier, we've had a lot of shift. In fact, Elevate slipped out of those top spots. We still have Wildcard doing really well, and this is really that part of the season when we start to question, wait, maybe some of those teams that we thought were going to be guaranteed for playoffs, maybe not even going to make it through.
Yeah, exactly right. But then there's now that new dynamic that we didn't think was going to be the case, but some teams have played extra games. You know, Wildcard have actually got a game in hand, and yet they're 3 points still clear in first place. It goes to show how dominating they have been. But teams like Sinister and Pittsburgh Knights, they got to play last week, whereas a few others didn't. So while they play, you know, again tonight, they still need to, of course, get the job done. Otherwise, those teams that look like they're very far away, Dev, aren't really all that far away.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, Xenox, about how some of these teams haven't played last week. And for example, one of the teams that did in fact play last week is Elevate. But despite having those extra games under their belt, due to not getting any points over Knights last week in their match, they're actually sitting outside the playoffs bracket right now. We're talking about Elevate, the seed 1 coming into this whole season. So there's been a huge shakeup here and a lot of possibility for movement. Like you're saying, if any of these teams here win 2 maps, they're going to get 6 points and leapfrog up over some of their opponents. Really, anyone from 1st into 6th could end up in those top 4 spots. And look, there's even a look in for Ferox down there in 7th as well.
Definitely correct. Of course, we'll have a quick look at tonight's games, the ones that going to be played tonight for this Playday. LFO versus Sinister will be the matchup that we will be seeing first. And again, continuing on with that storyline, Sinister did play last week. They did play against Kanga. LFO haven't played for 2 weeks now, since May 19, Dev. So they might be a bit cold coming into this series.
Yeah, that said, LFO are a team that like to do their preparation. They like to do their counter-strating, their VOD work. So they've had a bit of extra time to do that, refine some of their strategies, and that could work out. Let's have a look at LFO. These are the guys who came in qualified for this tournament through the open qualifier, and they really have come out with a bang, taking some maps off of some really serious teams. We're talking Knights, Wildcard, and some of these other big boys. These guys have been sending it all the way.
Yeah, exactly right. And sort of, again, touching on what I mentioned as we sort of alluded to with LFO not playing for 2 weeks, will they be a bit rusty? Or potentially, if you look at it as a positive, that is extra time for VOD review as well for these guys.
Pardon me there, had a bit of a coughing fit. And probably just in anticipation of this game with LFO, these guys have actually drawn every single match that they've played so far. So they've played, let's have a look at Elevate, Akami, Wildcard. These are some of the best teams that ANZ has to offer. And on top of that, Knights last week, who's gotten all the way up into 3rd place. LFO's taken a map off of all of those teams, and some of them were landslides. I'm talking 7-2 over Elevate in their first play day. That is just nuts. So we really have a lot of expectation riding on these guys who have really kind of come in as dark horses into this season. But they do have a challenging opponent this week in Sinister that definitely could put a stop to their upset potential.
And speaking of Sinister, you get what you ask. And Sinister here on the board, we mentioned they did play last week. They played against Kanga, who really took it to them in that first match. 8-7 in the end on Kafe, Sinister getting the win. But I believe, if I remember correctly, there was 2 match points for Kanga. So very well could have been Kanga's first map pick win against Sinister. Fortunately, they were able to come out on top, get that win, and then kind of cruise to a win on Theme Park as well. But they've had that extra game, or their series, I guess, under their belt from last week. They should still be pretty warmed up, ready to go against LFO.
Yeah, that said, Sinister, like you're saying, they did struggle a little bit last week. That game against Kanga really was a nail-biter on Kafe. It made you really worried looking at Sinister, the team that we thought that they, coming into this season, were finally, all their practice had paid off. We've seen Vinny and Molosca get MVPs so far in the Six Masters. And I think that these guys have a good trajectory, but that hiccup last week against Kanga, although they did get the full 6 points, does make you a little bit worried, because if you're at showing any weakness at all, LFO is the team that's going to punish you for it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And LFO, we spoke to Enigma just slightly prior to the broadcast, and, he was basically saying how if they can get through to tonight, beat Sinister, Kanga, and then Ferox, they're not the hardest opponents, especially if you look at the leaderboards that we just saw. So they must feel confident that if they can win tonight, I think even Enigma said if they can at least just take one, split at 1-1, their chances of them making top 4 are pretty likely.
Yeah, LFO, after this week, they have the two quote-unquote easiest teams remaining. Kanga and Ferox are currently 7th and 8th. So, like you're saying, even a draw here against Sinister isn't that bad, but I know that LFO are gunning for both maps.
Well, let's have a look at the maps that we've got. I'm not expecting to see Consulate at all in the pick. It should be in the ban, and it is through Sinister. LFO then going to be banning out Coastline. Not too much of a surprise there either. They, in fact, have not played it at all this season of Six Masters Dev. And in fact, you said to me, you're like, well, I haven't really seen much Coastline actually this season. It's only been played 4 times for the entire season thus far.
Yeah, I think LFO a bit of a comfort band there, and we're going to see the picks come out nice and fast as well. Sinister picking up Clubhouse, one of the most common picks. In fact, we're seeing the two Six Masters maps, I think, Clubhouse and Kafe. They're two that always get played. And what's super exciting about this, for this matchup, is they're both maps that these teams thrive on. Looking at Sinister first, picking Clubhouse, they're taking LFO to a map that LFO has had some seriously good performances. I'm talking 7-5 over Wildcard, 7-2 over Elevate. However, that momentum was somewhat stopped last week when LFO lost Clubhouse 7-2 tonight. And maybe Sinister, taking a look at that VOD from, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, they saw some weakness there and they want to take LFO to Clubhouse, and they think they can have that confidence despite LFO having previous success on it.
On the other end of this, though, LFO picking Kafe, you said they both thrive on it, but for LFO, they beat Knights on Kafe, but they lost to Akami on Kafe, right? So do you just think because they beat Knights in the more recent matchup that they then feel comfortable going on to Kafe? I mean, Sinister, really, besides Kanga, yes, they lost to Elevate, Akami on Kafe. So it's not a horrible pick, but I wouldn't sit back and say, oh, LFO are definitely going to win Kafe. This is easy. But I think both of these maps can go either way.
Definitely. And we've definitely seen a trend of maybe contrasting to what you would logically think is going to happen, where teams are more likely to win their map picks, especially in this video system where you only get the one ban. We've actually seen the opposite happen. A lot of teams are winning their opponent's map picks, and I think that comes down to a lot of gambles in the map veto from some of these teams with their picks. For example, LFO, you're mentioning here, they picked up Kafe for their pick, and we've seen good performances from Sinister on that map. LFO have a fairly strong history going way back, even the Six Masters qualifiers. They won multiple times on Kafe against teams such as Yura and PC419. And in fact, the last time these two teams played against each other was in the LPL Pro Grand Final, which was back in April. And Sinister won the series, but LFO won Kafe. So I think that's something that they're bringing into this, thinking, okay, we actually have the head-to-head advantage coming into this map.
A bit of history there, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And of course, we've given our thoughts on it. We're a bit divided, but we do want to hear how you guys at home are thinking this is going to play out. And a very large portion expecting a Sinister win. The draw vote as well, low at 14%. Not many siding with LFO here, Dev.
Yeah, well, LFO, I mean, seeing that 27% even is pretty encouraging, I think, for LFO fans, because coming into this season, they were the no-one team. They hadn't played in Pro League previously. Sinister have developed fans over seasons and seasons worth, and they are veterans of the ANZ community. LFO are the new and rising stars. And seeing even that 27%, even without any kind of organization behind them, whereas Sinister, obviously quite a large organization hailing from North America, LFO still have that 27%. We've seen more lopsided polls than this, so I think this is very much a kind of an accurate reaction of what the community believes is the likeliness of this match, and I can see it favoring Sinister just a little bit. They do have that extra experience, but honestly, I've got to say draw, just because LFO have drawn every single match they've played so far, and I just want to see that trend continue.
It does feel like, though, at some point the damn wall may break, right? So I do agree with you. I think the draw is a very likely outcome in this series. LFO has been the draw kings. What's interesting about LFO is actually we casted them last because they were 2 weeks ago, right? So when we saw that match, they went and split it with Pittsburgh Knights, but they picked Clubhouse. They lost Clubhouse. We now expect a lot from LFO. At the beginning of the season, not a whole lot was expected from them. We head into Clubhouse as well here to kickstart this series. A massive one about to play out between LFO and Sinister.
Two teams ready to clash. Let's jump straight on into the operator bans. Clubhouse, a map where those hard breaches are really important and often see those banned out, but LFO is actually going to get rid of the buck. A very unusual ban on this particular map, but we know Sinister, they have Nico, and he is such a good buck player, and the way that he can utilize buck, particularly on that cash bomb site from below inside of stock and displace people inside of cash, I think that's something that LFO are targeting here, trying to remove that from Sinister's arsenal. And on board with the Thatcher ban as well, it means that we have all three hard breaches with Hibana, Thermite, and most importantly, Maverick in the game. It's really going to change the landscape of how these attacks pan out.
Yeah, and another thing that we were speaking a little bit about before we came onto the broadcast was these bans, and Mira and Ying continue to be the most banned out operators, but something that has sort of changed in the last 2 weeks is Mira has been banned now, as we've just seen it again, 12 out of 13 matches, 12 of the last 13, 12 in a row. It's getting ridiculous. And obviously she's a very strong operator. She's able to lock down an area and get that information. Teams just don't want to deal with her. But surprisingly, now those Ying bans have also dropped down.
Yeah, and I mean, funnily enough, you do need both teams to kind of contribute to that ban phase. So LFO here, in their case, they very much go for counter bans rather than just the comfort bans. And Ying and Mira typically fall under that comfort ban category. To some degree, Thatcher is as well these days. And I think with Sinister going for those more comfort bans, Thatcher and Mira, we see in contrast, LFO, they get rid of the buck. In my guess, to counter Nico playing on the buck, he's going to switch over to the sledge instead. And that Valkyrie, who also we've seen some great plays from various players on Sinister, and is just in general a really good information gathering operator. I think that's why we're not seeing that Ying ban, because in LFO's games, in their mind, they're just going for those counter bans rather than the comfort ones.
And as we head into Clubhouse for this first match, LFO going to be defending, Sinister going to be attacking, and I mean, the poll vote says Sinister are favored heavily here. And if that's going to be the case, I'm expecting them to then come out here on attack, pick up a few early rounds, and really put maybe the pressure right onto LFO from the get-go. Might see them be a bit more aggressive than usual, but at the same time, we're getting towards the end of the season. You don't want to be too careless, because for Sinister's sake, they've only actually got one more series after this. Next week is their last week.
Yeah, and I mean, they've got Ferox to play still. Both of these teams, in fact, still have yet Ferox to play. I think both of these teams probably going into this match, they're thinking, all right, we need to lock out 2 points here, and then probably going to take 2 points in each of the remaining games as well. Especially for Sinister here. Now, they are currently sitting in that second place on the standings, and they want to make sure that they can stay there, even after Elevate gets a few more games under their belt, and Akami as well. So Sinister does have to be careful. But as for this particular round, it is this basement bomb site. Wow! Aggressive play from Angmo, but he actually fails to jump out there. Not quite sure what happened. Close, but no cigar. And in fact, he'll just remain aggressive here in storage as Sinister try to flush him out. They're going for this full pop-down take, it seems.
And Sinister, this is exactly what I said they probably need to be trying to achieve to start things, get these early kills, make it very difficult for LFO. And the 5v4 now moving forward makes things a bit easier for them. Moving in pretty quickly. They've got a lot of time still remaining as well as they continue to clear out this second floor. looking good for now. But for LFO as well, they cannot get too congested and locked up and feel like the pressure's mounting on them. Hold your positions, stay safe, and wait for the push to come from Sinister. And who knows, maybe they might just slip up.
I quite like this mentality on the defensive side from LFO. Instead of going for that full die-hard SSG roam where you bring the castle and you have a hard roam game, they just put a couple of moot jammers and a couple of mozzie pests upstairs to try to delay Sinister on their take. And it's worked perfectly. Mind you, Sinister have also had all of these hatches and such pre-opened by the defenders, so they won't have to spend too much time doing that. But in fact, Nico will have to open up some of this floor. He doesn't have the buck available, so he's simply going to have to shoot this wall and try to get long angles all the way into kitchen, where Sinister attempts to flush out that player of the Kaid, Mims, playing deep. And it might be quite difficult for Sinister here, and all the while, they'll be vulnerable to those C4s as well.
44 seconds remaining. A little bit of damage done early, but now LFO right back in this one, especially if they can find an entry frag or someone who pushes in. Nate goes down, doesn't find anyone there for Nico. With only 30 seconds remaining, there might be a case where Sinister are just going to have to funnel in, which does give a big advantage back over to LFO here towards the end, even though they're down a player depth.
And that's the second kill on the round for Vinny. Derpe jumps in as well. A good flank position from Fisho. But Vinny's just going nuts. It's all on Nasty now. He's a good player, but he's got to delay a lot of time. And that's a flawless opening for Sinister on their map pick. Making a statement here against LFO.
Yep. That's exactly what you want to see, though, from Sinister. As I mentioned, go to Church at Arsenal here for the second round. And for Sinister's sake, and, you know, considering that they're getting towards the end of their season, you come out and take this first map, it probably just eases any nerves that they may have. That going into that next map on Kafe, they can feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more relaxed, and really take it to LFO there. So, you know, you mentioned the draw, but if Sinister take Clubhouse, I might then side with the poll vote and go with Sinister.
Anything's possible at this stage, and look, Sinister, I think the main thing we can take away from that opening round is they're not messing around here. They're totally ready to take the fight to LFO. It started off with a nice early pick onto Hills, who was that lone roamer. We did see a bit of aggression from Ungmo, but didn't get too die-hard into it. So this is just cleaned house. They found that first kill, and then from then on, started to push on, collapse from all sides, and when the execute came around, LFO just wasn't prepared for it. But despite that, LFO will intend to take this bomb site once again of Church and Arsenal. A very similar setup as well, using these mute jammers, a couple of reinforcements invested upstairs, as well as some mozzie pests, no doubt, to try to delay this take from Sinister. But as demonstrated from the lads in red, even if it does take them some time, they can be very efficient on this roam clear. Ungmo continuing to play this aggressive position around storage and into lounge. Sinister, how will they deal with this extra aggression? Nasty as well, roaming in bar currently. Still have a few players down on that bomb site, including Mims hanging around blue. But where's Sinister going to mount this push? It's a moment, it's a collapse from all sides. Sogs, very aggressive in kitchen. As soon as some of these LFO players start getting found out, it could get dangerous, but Ungmo takes out Fisho to kick things off, pushing in through the garage. Some good utility taken out there from Fisho's hands, and now Sinister is going to have to deal with this read we've seen from LFO, that extra aggression. And right on the back of that pick, all of those LFO roamers, just the three of them, have defaulted back onto the objective downstairs. Sinister now have to re-drone. They have one man down, and no doubt the drones that Fisho would have brought have been neutralized. A great read here from LFO to delay as much time as possible. In fact, they've changed some of their reinforcements around and using that Rio on this Moto hatch, forcing Derp to use that utility. Some of the LFO players keen for an aggressive peek, and that's Nasty punished for it. Vinny's been on fire tonight. I believe that's his 4th kill in the game. Now together with Nico, trying to open up as much of this floor as possible. Another drone taken out, but this is good progress thus far from Sinister, despite that early pick against them. This is where Nico tries to find angles through the floor. The hatch actually gets tricked from the Kaid Electroclaw, destroying those Hibana X Kairos pellets. Meanwhile, Sogs also did find that nice pick onto Vinny, who's been popping off so far. A minute left. Sinister still cautious of these flanks. Unreinforced hatch will be dealt with nicely here. Another reattempt at this main hatch. Will Sinister be able to take that open? They're in a similar position to how they were in the previous round, except they've lost that player. In fact, 2 players from their lineup. They do have that pick, but things are looking pretty desperate, and Sogs is going to pile on with yet another. Poor Derp going down. Just holding from in church. 15 seconds left. Nungmo finds another one. Just Nico now. What's he going to be able to do? What a change from the flawless start. Nico dropping down the hatch, finished off in the crossfire. And LFO, a very confident response to Sinister's first flawless round.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that one, Dev. I know you love the
I always enjoy
screen time. I'll give you the air time as well. You had a coughing fit. I had a coughing fit. We'll have a coughing fit. But hey, we're back. Second round going the way of LFO. CTTV cash is where we're going. But good to see the response from LFO. I mentioned it a little bit in that first round that, Sinister probably looking to come out, put the pressure right onto LFO. They're able to bounce back, respond, which is good to see. And I'm expecting to see a pretty close series between these two teams, even here on Clubhouse as well.
What really makes me impressed so far for LFO is, despite losing so dramatically on that first round, they completely changed things up. Decided, okay, instead of faking out our aggression and forcing Sinister to just clear the map and hoping that we can play the late round, LFO decided to dial up that aggression. They had 3 roamers in the very first portion of that action phase. As soon as they got a single pick, that was Ungmo, he got taken quite low, but he did finish off Fisho guy pushing into the garage. All of those roamers from LFO just went straight back to the bomb site and conserved their numbers advantage and forced Sinister to drone out the rest of the map with less manpower and less drones. Really smart move. And it proved very effective.
I do believe it is the first time we're seeing CCTV in cache as well, which is usually very common. I mean, the second floor itself is usually a common location on Clubhouse. Kennel's going to be super important with the Hibana and the Maverick. You think that Sinister should be able to open it up pretty comfortably. Depp is already going to make his way up there to the Kennel's wall. Well, Mayan Garage, super important as well, just in terms of presence in there. Up at the rafters for Mims. Depp already getting quite good progress actually on this.
Nice strategy here from Sogs, but I don't know how effective it'll be. He's trying to use those gas canisters to choke out Derpe, but as you can see, Derpe only took a tiny amount of damage and successfully unreinforced that wall with what we call the Maverick trick, using his blowtorch, making a line at the top, line at the bottom. Wall becomes unreinforced, and then Fisho can use his lifeline explosives to open up that rotate hole into the bomb site. Grab this bandit as well from Ungmo, but I'm not sure how relevant that will be unless if we see a rotate from Sinister into construction, trying to open this cache wall, and it seems that is the play here. Fisho getting nice and aggressive here, peeking towards the top of red stairs.
Really aggressive from Fisho guy, just pushing into construction like you said. I think you still probably want to have this presence though. Outside of CCTV. He's going to stay there for now, see what he can find with the drone, send it in. Minute 27 seconds left. Still a lot of time for Sinister. They've got a lot of entryways opened up as well, so they're not going to just have to funnel in from one direction. Oscar the flash in, but he's going to now open up that wall above, throw another one above it. Minute 10 seconds remaining. There's the nade from Nico.
I think that was Nico doing his job from just on the balcony here, throwing a nade all the way in. See Milo start to open up this wall into Cash, exposing more angles, but Hills finds one aggressively peeking into Con. Milo's going to re-peek that. Now he's used his X-Kairos, and Hills is stuck between a rock and a hard place here. He'll have to keep trying to contest these angles and hope that his aim is true.
20 seconds remaining. He goes down. Alaska takes his place, spray through the wall. A lot of damage onto Nasty Hills and Mims. Very, very low. Hills takes a lot more damage as well. 25 seconds remaining. I mean, LFO are completely banged up here. In a 4v4, not much time, but should be a pretty quick plant when it does go down. And Sinister are going to go straight in. Fisher Guy finds Mims. But Rafters finds a second one. It does get traded out, though, by Hills. Down at Garage. And it's now a 1 versus 2. The fuse has been planted. Retake is now the option.
With barely any health to his name. What real chance is there for Hills? Milo has been lit up very significantly. So just one bullet from Hills and Milo will go down. But Sinister, the players just waiting, holding this crossfire. Milo will be able to see if Hills crosses. Oh, and just a tiny tap under the foot will finish him off. Oh, a tough spot for Hills, but yeah, fortunately for Milo, Hills just so low on HP there. Nice, easy.
It's never that easy, though. And really, the round as a whole wasn't easy. LFO pressured from pretty much every side. Not a lot of focus, though, from Kennels even after the wall was blown up, which was interesting to see from Sinister. But considering how much control they had over that construction site, not much of a surprise, really, at all. CCTV and Cash again. Second try, second chance for LFO. We'll see if second time's the charm.
Hey, that mentality worked when it came to Church and Arsenal. They got flaws the first time round, and well, they turned it back onto Sinister for their second attempt. Could we see some kind of adaptation here from LFO to make the difference? They did lose the opening pick on that previous round, and well, it seems like the pattern may continue from their Church Arsenal defenses. From Sinister's perspective, though, they found that first pick, but then Hills got aggressive through into Con from Cash and managed to take out one of their players as well. So we ended up at a 4 versus 4 with 17 seconds left. As you mentioned, none of the players from Sinister were really pressuring from that Kennels wall. Instead, choosing, I think it was Fisher Guy, jumped in through that CCTV window on the west side and went straight for Garage. That distraction, in tandem with the other Sinister players pushing in primarily from the construction doorway into Cash itself, really proved to overwhelm LFO, allow them to get that plant down. Mind you, that 4v4 managed to turn into a 2 versus 1. There was a significant cost there for Sinister.
But the 2 versus 1 wasn't impossible. I mean, I know Hills had no health, but you mentioned it as well. Milo was like one shot too. But I think the problem for Hills was more so the direction he was coming from more than anything.
And I'm impressed with Sinister. Great job with those crossfires as well. You can see Sogs making an adaptation here. Was the first to die in the previous round, and now he wants to get aggressive. This run out all the way from Strip. See if there's any cameras to help him. No, all those default exterior cameras have been eliminated by Sinister, fortunately. Sogs wants some kind of info. He can run out this door, and he'll actually catch Milo if he does. Potentially Nico as well. Derp sending a drone in, and that's about to spot Sogs. There's a drone hole right there. Derp spots him, no doubt. And someone will surely be watching for this.
Heart's beating in my chest for Sogs right now. I'm that nervous for it, but I think he gets away unscathed in terms of location. He's now just able to move out. Is careful though, of course. Doesn't want to sort of get picked up as he rotates back. Would be disastrous if LFO lose the play this early on. But a minute 40, I mean, time has passed. Sinister wasted a little bit of time looking around for him, droning him out. But, I mean, you kind of got to do that. Nice angle, spam from Nico onto Angmo. And for the pre-fire, expecting a trade from Stairs, doesn't find it. And luckily for him, didn't find one trading him back. Vince also gets Mims, and now it makes it difficult for LFO. Sogs has got to probably step things up. The pace is not quite there. Doesn't even get Nico. Throws out the C4, but he went to the left side. Is able to get at least the elimination in the end.
Oh. Wow, what a way to close things out there for Sinister. We didn't really see the majority of the action, but I'm pretty sure Sinister just overwhelmed the bomb site. They definitely had tabs on Sogs as we saw them find him going for a run out from strip. They didn't manage to catch him out, but they had Nico waiting for him in bar, at which point LFO were aware of that and they completely tunnel vision on trying to help Sogs. We saw that player of Ungmo peeking through that construction hatch down towards lobby, but Nico saw that angle first and managed to find that pick. Meanwhile, Vinny and the rest of Sinister just decided to go straight into that bomb site and take the very few players remaining who were on site, overwhelm the defenders, and move from there.
And it's hard to criticize Sogs a bit too much there in that situation, because for his sake, you know, it's not his fault that they got so rushed, I guess, on site, and that they were losing players left, right, and center. He can't just speed up too quickly, and otherwise he makes too much noise, gets picked off pretty easily. He does get Nico in the end, but I don't think he played that horribly. He was able to be at least in an aggressive position on his roam without getting sort of flushed out by those drones, or at least that we know of. Unfortunately, just time was against him, even though the clock still said about a minute and a half. Sinister didn't care. They just went straight in.
Yeah, and it's the second time, in fact, that we've had LFO in a position where Sinister have that bomb site taken away from them. LFO forced to retake from a disadvantageous position. Previously, it was Hills trying to come up red stairs, and ooh, that's a nice drone spot. Surely it's seen, though. No, in fact, Fisher keeps that drone alive. That's a nice one. Might add that to my arsenal. I think it's going to get taken out, surely. Nope, maybe not. The rotation down to that bottom floor bomb site of Church and Arsenal. If you recall, LFO lost this to a flawless attack from Sinister in that first round, and then came back to bite them with a very aggressive start. Found that first pick, and then went full turtle onto that bomb site, and it worked to perfection for LFO. They're going to continue that aggression to some degree. We saw Ungmo roaming previously. He's going to sit in storage at the moment. Sogs and Nasty both go back to the bomb site, but Sogs, with that Vigil, he can use his ERC-7 Disruptor to jam up some of those drones from Sinister, and then while they're clearing the top floor with their drones, they won't know for certain where that Vigil is.
Well, if you don't want to capture the drones, then you can try and avoid them. Sog's making it pretty clear, just doesn't want to have to deal with that. Means he can get to a decent position above the basement. And it'll be a bit more difficult for Sinister to probably just rush straight in on this site, let's say the next 20-25 seconds, because that's how quick it really was in that last round. In 20 seconds time, Sinister pushed straight onto the site, picked up 3 kills. Don't envision that happening here. Shagai, you're out at rafters for now. Sinister haven't really picked up the pace so much here for this basement bomb site.
That said, this looks a lot more to me like that first round we saw from Sinister, where things went very slowly. They did find an initial pick onto Hills, and that's the thing that's really missing this round. But it looks much more like that first round than it did LFO's reply, where they had such confidence. But what will it be like if LFO have a 5-man on site and Sinister have 5 men to attack it? That's the question.
Although I'm trying to see where Sogs is. We haven't seen him for a little while, and playing the Vigil, thought maybe there would have been a chance that he had been playing on that first floor. Elects not to. Oh, this is not as aggressive as I thought he was going to be.
Part of the mentality here from Sogs, no doubt, is keeping that Vigil Disruptor going so that the attackers don't know whether he's on the bottom floor and they assume he's roaming. But now they've droned him out. He might try to look for an opportunity to rotate upstairs, but it's very dangerous. And he looks to be trapped in blue. Now we shift our focus to this hatch. Nice nade thrown out. And in fact, the X-Kairos do detonate successfully, opening that kitchen hatch, something that can prove to be so difficult. Meanwhile, the first pick goes Sinister's way. 20 seconds, and things are looking like they'll need to explode shortly.
See if that happens literally or figuratively, as Fisher and Vince quickly line up the kill feed in a very quick manner, and it looks like the explosions have commenced. Hills is going to wait for the drop down. He had already found one prior to that. Nasty found a third too, so it's only a 1 versus 2s. He does drop down, but Oscar's going to get the plant down. In a 1 versus 2 with a bit of time, never mind, headbangs the wall. Sinister take the round. Right now, they're looking quite comfortable on Clubhouse.
Sinister demonstrating that slow and steady wins the race, and that they have the ability to collapse within those last 20 seconds and come out on top. If we compare that to the very first successful attack from Sinister onto that Church and Arsenal bomb site, they had that nice early pick onto Hills, didn't have to worry about that, and they only had to eliminate those 4 players on the bomb site and force themselves down. And that ended up flawless. This time around, they didn't get that initial pick, so it ended up much closer when push came to shove. And of course, Hills managed to deny 2 of those entries from Sinister with those 2 picks underneath the kitchen hatch, but it clearly wasn't enough. And Sinister, covering all their bases, they might take them a really long time to get to the point where they can drop on and execute, but the executes are just so good, and it's too much for LFO to handle.
LFO just right now look like a team that hasn't played a competitive match for 2 weeks. When I mean competitive match, I mean just a 6 Masters match. It's been 2 weeks for them, of course. Sinister were able to play last week. They look switched on. They look ready. They look warmed up, whereas LFO just a bit cold out of the gate right now. 1-4, it's not over just yet. They can find a couple of rounds to finish off the half. But even then, of course, then they're going to have their attacking side as well, Dev. So I'm not counting them out yet. But if they do lose this map, Sinister's form going into Kafe, it's more of a 50-50 map as well. It's going to prove to be difficult for LFO. You know, you mentioned the draw streak. They would hate to then lose both maps.
Yeah, definitely. It would be a first for LFO. We have seen a bit of hit and miss for LFO on this map of Clubhouse. We've talked about that 7-2 against Elevate and that victory 7-5 against Wildcard. But we've also seen, just in their most recent match 2 weeks ago, LFO really got smacked about by Knights on this map 7-2. That's their most recent performance. No doubt Sinister would have been watching that VOD to find what weaknesses there are for LFO. And at the moment, I think the biggest weakness for LFO is the fact that the only round they've won on defense here has been due to success in their aggression by getting that opening pick. And multiple times here we've seen LFO go for this aggression, but it's working against them more than it's working for them because Sinister are good at punishing it. Perfect example right there.
Yeah, you're going to run the Vigil and the Mozzie. Unfortunately, though, the Vigil Mims does get droned out and spotted out and eliminated. The aggression's good, but it backfires just like that, though, Dev. You can play aggressive. That's fine. You get the reward. They won the round in round 2. But then things like this can happen. Unless Sogs can find one here and even it up, it's going to prove to be very difficult for LFO. Big opportunity coming up against Finn. Finn spots him, run through. Bad timing for Sogs. 3 versus 5 now. And LFO's aggressive round to close out the half has gone into tatters.
And Hills is actually going to pile on here. After Ungmo got that pick, Hills gets nice and aggressive. He does need to be cautious, however, because Sinister no doubt have drones all over Garage. That's why he's hiding in this corner, because previously LFO spotted that Sinister put a drone on the northeast corner of Garage on top of the tires. Hills hidden from that drone's position right now. He'll hear the drop here from Fisher Guy. Gonna peek on out and get that kill. That's another one, evening up the man count, 3 versus 3.
With 1:10 remaining as well. 3v3 sounds a lot more doable here for LFO. I'm not sure what Vince was thinking there. Just ran around, didn't even think to check that maybe someone would be standing. Angmo finds a kill, and how this game has quickly turned into the favor of LFO. It was 3-5 in front of for Sinister's favor. And now it's 3 versus 2. Miloska and Derpo got a lot of work to do down in the basement. Fortunately, Derpo's already in Arsenal. And a lot of that goes due to the fact that LFO sent pretty much everyone out of the basement. Derpe just gets sprayed through anyway from Angmo. Hills does it upstairs, Angmo does it downstairs.
All on Miloska. 30 seconds to play with. He has to make this 3 1v1s. Just a small magazine as well. Dropping this hatch would be suicide. So many angles to contest with, but he does have a flashbang. Oh no, flashing himself. Somehow he survives just a bit longer, but Angmo will finish him off. A bit of an embarrassment there for Miloska, but more so for Sinister. LFO, I was talking about their aggression. It was punished, and they piled on further, and it worked.
It's that interesting take of risk versus reward. 3-5, you lose your first 2 roamers, send in another one, see if that works, and it did. And you got to give credit to LFO for that, I think, to close out the round. They really needed to at least make it 2-4, because 1-5 almost feels impossible, that mountain that they would have to then climb back from. But at the very least, they stuck to their guns. They had a game plan going into that round, Dev. They stuck to it, and from there, they were at least able to bring it back, and then from there, capitalize and win the round.
It really just goes to show that these aggressive players from LFO, we've talked about how they've really been the detriment of some of these rounds, but they've also been the singular cause for both of the victories that LFO had on their defensive half. And it really comes down to those judgment calls. If you have one of those aggressive plays and it's a good judgment and it works, then great, you're gonna pat you on the back, but it's also been not working, and that's why we're looking at Sinister in the lead going into their attacking, rather their defending half now. Although I wouldn't count out LFO. They had some good adaptations, and now that they're on the attack, we'll see if they can take us to overtime or potentially even have a reverse sweep here against Sinister.
I mean, what is interesting, though, is that LFO, the only 2 rounds that they actually won on defense was down in Church and Arsenal. And, of course, now we're going to round 7 here on Church and Arsenal, although this time LFO is going to be attacking. So we'll see if that trend that transpired in the first half maybe continues here for LFO's sake, if they can continue to play this bomb site well, but from the attacking side of things, make it 3-4. All of a sudden, we've got ourselves a map. It's then very, very close between these 2 teams. But if it goes 2-5, Sinister can probably pull away on the defensive side.
We do see this typical SSG roam from Sinister. However, that Vigil that was teased out in the reveal phase was 6-picked by Nico over onto that Wamai, likely to reinforce an aggressive position on site where he likes to anchor, using those discs to protect his shield. But never mind that for now. It does look like he has a shield up there, but for now it's really LFO we're looking at as they attempt to counter this SSG roam with that information denial. No Mozzie, but we do have the mute and the castle to protect any rotations. A lot of rotations opened up, but how effective will LFO be at droning out these players? Because so far, Sinister, I'm pretty sure that's a 5-man on-site defense. Indeed it is. 5 players turtling down. And LFO has spent half the round just trying to figure out whether there's anyone roaming.
Do you think it maybe is that mindset that LFO's defense, they were very aggressive with roamers, thinking then Sinister are going to try and play a bit of the same cards that was dealt, right? And maybe they're expecting roamers themselves.
Yeah, definitely possible. And this SSG info denial roam is very common in the meta at the moment, but one of the things that makes this so good is that you don't actually have to roam with this setup. You can do this setup and then not roam, but the attackers still have to spend all that time trying to look for those roamers. I think Sinister believe that LFO are less efficient at doing that map clear than LFO are, and look, it seems to be working for them so far. Man, Sinister just finding those 2 picks nice and early. This is really going to hamstring LFO for the rest of this.
Taking blue is going to be very difficult. Angmo already taking damage. They know his position. 33 seconds, not a lot of time. I mean, you got nothing to lose though. You're going to try and smoke off, then push right side. I mean, fair enough, but Hills can just drop down right in front of you, but dies immediately. Not too much of a surprise there. Almost feels like he was getting baited. Look, the team kill doesn't really matter too much here. Sinister are going to win the round, barring a catastrophe. Doubt it though. Sogs has a lot of work to do from dirt.
10 seconds left.
Sogs trying to push in from blue, but no, caught in that crossfire, and Sinister just looked so good there. Never for a moment did it seem like LFO had a look in on that round. From start with that setup, LFO too inefficient at dealing with it, and Sinister, when eventually the attackers started to cascade onto the bomb site, they found all of the opening picks.
And it goes back to sort of what you were saying in that round, though. Around this, I think it was a minute and a half into that round, and you mentioned just how long it took them to really clear a lot of that first floor presence, which there was none. We knew that. They probably, at least it seems like, didn't. But in saying that, if they suspected that they were playing 5 on site, then the reason then would be, why did it take so long for them to sort of clear that first floor, put a lot of pressure on? So I don't want to assume for what they were thinking, Dev, but from what we saw and how they were playing it, a little too slow.
Perhaps LFO need a little bit more practice and need to work on their map clears a little bit more efficiently, because in contrast, when LFO didn't get aggressive on their defenses when they did the exact same strategy we just saw from Sinister, where you have that information denial upstairs, you pretend you're roaming, but you don't actually roam. Sinister didn't care. They just did their due diligence, they cleared the entire map, and they had half the round left to execute. And we talked about how good they were at executing, even with just 20 seconds left. They always use that time to get themselves an advantageous position to capitalize upon for the rest of the round. And LFO just weren't efficient in the way that we saw from Sinister.
Either way, we go back to CCTV and Cash on the second floor. Another opportunity for LFO to not let Clubhouse slip away from them. It does feel like Sinister have got the grasp right over it. Straight for Kennel's wall. We'll see, though, if they're going to put a lot of pressure on this, because Sinister didn't. They elected more so to try and gain control of construction in the north side and push in from there.
I'm sorry, this is the most painful thing to look at. Sinister have just bullied LFO. Well, I guess as a response, Hills does take out Milo. Fortunately, it's just a Jaeger, so his utility's been placed down. But just talking about that wall for a second, Sinister did completely mince it up. Whoa, that's a nice C4. Misses out. My God, I can't even get a point across because Sinister and LFO won't let me get a word in edgeways. But it looks like mincing up that wall didn't seem to have an impact by the end of it, because LFO, more specifically Nasty, managed to be quite efficient with that blowtorch and open up that wall. LFO numbers advantage and the Kennel's wall open. Let's see what they can do from here on.
Yeah, because it does feel like this round's in their favor. You mentioned the numbers advantage, but Fisher Guy's also very low, so that numbers advantage is maybe even more increased than what it seems as just a normal 5v4. It's more like a 5v3.5. This is the perfect time to sort of get back into this map. 2-5, things are going against you. You've been really unfortunate in a lot of rounds. Vince does get mims though, and again, that means it's 4 versus 4. And only a minute and 18 seconds, and within the last 30 seconds, not a lot of movement from LFO. Ooh, not too much of a surprise. I mean, CCTV and Cash, you do see these push-ins at the last second, but then at the same time, Sinister are finding these picks.
You know, there's 2 LFO players trying to file up from red stairs. They both go down. 2 players try to file in from garage. Nico down from oil pit. Takes out one of them, Mungmo, outside the Kennel's wall. What's he going to do? There's no presence at all from LFO attempting to take from the construction side, the attack we saw from Sinister. Instead, LFO just committing fully to this Kennel's take. Through garage now, Nasty finds that first pick. Nico's also roaming downstairs, so if LFO attempt to go for that plant, no doubt Nico can deny with his C4 still in the pocket, or he could flank through garage. C4 goes out to the default plant spot, detonates, takes a lot of damage off of Nasty, but still no cigar. The plant has to come down.
Double kill for Nico. Fisher Guy's down. It's a 1v1, but Nasty's very, very low. He'll finish off Fisher Guy, find his 3rd kill. Oh, through the floor, Nasty goes down. Nico wins the round for Sinister, and LFO's nightmare is a reality still.
Sorry, Nico, but what? I actually thought LFO had done the impossible there and come back from, what was it, a 2 versus 4? And they had no control. All they were doing was trying to push in from garage, where there was a player hard holding, and Kennel's wall. But somehow they managed to make it happen, turn it into a 1 versus 1. Nico, though, in that power position from Lounge, not only is he able to deal a lot of damage with that C4, but he gets both of those last 2 players as well. Absolutely nuts.
Huge performance, and for LFO now, it just feels dire, desperate. Match point Sinister, 7-2 was something I wasn't expecting, Dev. If it happens, which at this point looks likely.
For LFO, need to see a little bit more accomplished in their attacks, not just in simply results, because they're yet to win an attack, forcing Sinister to go around the world, go to their 3rd choice bomb site. First time we've actually seen Bedroom and Gym here on this map. LFO never took it on their half. LFO, that's in that previous round, we didn't see any kind of pressure from construction at all, which really has become the norm. What is this from Sinister? They're just making so many holes. Are they just trying to mess around with the Maverick? Who's going to reinforce it? Come on, guys. No one? Oh, Derp is going to put reinforce it from outside. What?
Interesting tactics for what's been an interesting round. At this point, not too surprised to see some different things come out. Look, LFO probably going to lose this, Dev. Going into Kafe, I'm almost sort of... Oh, wow. If Miloska had waited one more second, I think he does get Sogsa or Angmo, whoever went by.
Yeah. We've gotten traded, though, by Angmo and Garage, so... Yeah, bit of a risky play that Molluska decides not to go for. Probably wise. Oh, no! Oh, I can't do that to him. Sogs. Wallbang. We talked about it. Poor Milo. Not having a great day.
I think LFO is not having a great day, though, more so than Milo. Milo's probably happy as a team. Dev, that's the main thing. 2 minutes. Or what could very well be the final attack from LFO here on Clubhouse. It's a better start, though. This is their problem. Now you've got this sort of scoreboard pressure as well. 2-6. You feel like, okay, even if we win this round, still a long way to try and send it to overtime. Angmo, don't walk into that. Oh, never mind. It's nasty. Minute 30 seconds remaining though, Dev, and LFO have struggled on their attacks when they really take their time, leaving things to the last second. Sinister finding picks. This time it has changed though in terms of the pick department. It's actually LFO that are finding the picks. And Sinister getting picked apart one by one here at Bedroom. Remains Vince.
Bomb located by attackers.
Wants to find a player on this angle. Oh, peeking on through. Does land that one bullet, I believe. Droned out, though. A player in logistic. Oh, finds that one. Hills goes down. Vinny ready to contest, but concussed by the lifeline. Just holding on. Forced out, and oh, the timing on that C4 was not in his favor. 4 versus 2 now. 4 versus 1 now. What can Nico show for us? Absolutely nothing. LFO finally come back and get an attack.
There's not too much to celebrate though for LFO's sake. 3-6 now. But small steps, baby steps, I guess, Dev, and thinking that, okay, you get one, let's get a next one, make it 4-6, and then maybe the pressure falls towards Sinister. Long way to go here, but it's a decent start. Not only that, but then to also look to take the form going into Kafe. Try and slant your shots, and play a little bit better.
Well, you got to start somewhere here for LFO, and, well, it's a tumultuous task ahead of him. Sinister looking in control of this map. They did pick it, and they did get a chance to watch LFO 2 weeks ago lose it 7-2 to Knights. Well, at least LFO have gotten more rounds they did against Knights here.
Attackers need to locate and defuse.
But yeah, I'm as much the skeptic as you are, Jake. I just don't see LFO really being able to call this back to a 6-6. We'll need to see a lot more sophistication on their attacks. And you know, strangely, Sinister have actually changed their operator lineup on this defense, which previously was just so effective with that SSG-style roam lineup, using the Mute and the Castle, which neither of which have been picks now, because it played into the weakness of LFO, which is slow map control taking. They just were so inefficient at clearing out that roam with those Mute jammers upstairs and the Castle barricades. Despite that, Sinister are going to opt just to go for a much more turtle-style hold without putting much utility upstairs. I had a couple players upstairs. Fisher was opening a few hatches. Nico's upstairs at the moment, but surely there's just a full default back onto site.
I mean, LFO have sort of shown as well to Sinister that they really do take their time trying to be wary of roamers. If that's going to be the case, you might as well just turtle on site. Wait for them to sort of waste about a minute and a half before they really start to open up the floorboards and then put some pressure onto Sinister. So Sinister are fine with that. They also know that this has worked for them successfully in the past. Why not do it again? You only need one more round, so there's no reason to run around and take too many risks. They don't need to take risks right now. Just play safe, play smart. And honestly, wait for LFO maybe to mess up, because that just seems the way it's been going so far in this match.
Yeah, I totally agree with you with the sentiment that Sinister could just kind of chill out and wait for LFO to make a mistake. But that's why I'm confused as to why Sinister have changed their operator lineup, changed their defensive mentality here. They're still going for that full turtle, 5 players on site, but are investing that utility upstairs, which means LFO can much more efficiently clear the map, which is exactly what they've done. You can see only 1 minute and 20 seconds, 1 minute and 10 seconds down, and they're already starting to get a look in on blue and start taking out some of these players, wasting the my discs now to enable Ungmo to try and fry that player behind the generator. And LFO have making really good time at the moment.
Yeah, I was literally about to mention that. To credit LFO, they've been a lot quicker in this round. They had to be. And fortunately, Ungmo is successful. Turns out they're playing in blue. They can drone it out. They have so much time, 1:20. If they can get this drop down secured, I think LFO should be able to at least find another couple of kills, get position, go for the plant if necessary. May not even come to that though, Dev. If they can find a couple more picks, they can then push in, get the last couple holding angles.
Tap, tap. Oh, he sees one. Does just skim Vinny. You can see tiny lick of damage on him. But Vinny contesting this with the ACOG of his own. Some utility put both directions, and you can see the contest coming out on blue. Couple pre-fires through the smoke for Vinny. But still, LFO don't have this control. Oh no, what an ill-timed prone. Fisher guy does find that pick on the Sogs, and now Sinister are in the driver's seat once again here on this blue take.
They should know where Fisher guy is. They have the location of him. Shouldn't be too impossible to potentially trade it back out. Nico's watching, then looking for the retrade if Fisher guy does go down. And time for drop down for Angmo. They knew Fisher guy's location. There's the trade that I was mentioned though. Nico was ready for that in position. 3 versus 2. 10 seconds, but the plant's going to go down from Nasty. Nico realizes this. Wants to see if he can disrupt it. Isn't going to be able to. Takes the pick. A bit of damage is now done. 45 seconds here. Big opportunity for Sinister to finish this round if Nico and Vincia find his last 3 players.
Vinny still has a C4 in the pocket as well. Finds that first kill. Vinny with the C4 could make all the difference. He doesn't even need it. Just gonna find 2 with the shotgun. All on hills here, and it's match point against him. He has to hold on as long as possible. No utility. He'll need to trust in his rifle. Finds the first one. All on Vinny. 1 versus 1. Peeking around the corner. Can he close it out? The map on the line. He gets the injure. And there's time. But does he start it? He does. That's going to be the map for Sinister.
Oh my days. 0.41 seconds. GG. Sinister take Clubhouse. In a dramatic fashion, in a dramatic finish, it looked like LFO were maybe mounting a comeback. It's cut short, stopped dead in its tracks from Vincia.
That was a 2 versus 3, but Vinny got all of those kills. It was almost like a 1 versus 3 there. That was nuts. And to close out the map, 7-3 with 17 kills, man. He's plus 12. That's over a 3.0 KD for Vincia. Unparalleled right there.
Unparalleled as a team as well, I think, for Sinister. You know, 17 kills. Look, it's hard to not say, wow, what a game from Vincia. But as a team, Sinister played that really, really convincing on Clubhouse. And I just want to take us back a bit here, Dev. I did say, you know, coming into this series, Sinister got to play their match last week. LFO didn't. Is that something that maybe is playing a factor? I wouldn't put everything on it, and I don't want to then provide LFO with an excuse to Sinister. Sinister earned that. They played absolutely sublime, both attack and defense, and Vincia popped off, and everything is in their corner. And now going into Kafe, that poll vote suddenly looks a lot more realistic, and I think there's a big opportunity for Sinister to maybe end this draw streak of LFO.
It's true, but bear in mind that was Sinister's map pick, and LFO don't have the greatest form on Clubhouse 2 weeks ago, losing 7-2 to Knights. Sinister saw that weakness and outclassed them today. I mean, Vinny in particular, but it was a team performance. And LFO, a lot of the rounds that they lost, that was also a team loss. Mistakes that Sinister were able to capitalize upon with unsuccessful aggression And the rounds that they won were usually on the back of successful aggression. Overall, Sinister outclassed LFO there on Clubhouse, but secondly, we'll be going on to Kafe, which is LFO's own map pick. We're seeing good performances from both teams on this map, but it could go any way.
It could go in any direction. For LFO's sake, will they keep the draw streak alive? We'll be back after the break.
Please hold. Your call is very important to us. All operators are busy at this time.
Baby, leave it all for the faded hearts. I don't mind if they call us crazy, 'cause they don't understand what we're after. We're never heading back until we're older. We couldn't care no more, not any longer. Under peach yellow skies, we keep on searching, but we will never know what we're after. You're mine, I wanna run away. We're never heading back until we're older. We couldn't care no more, not any longer. Under peach yellow skies, we keep on searching, but we will never know what we're after. my heart into something gold. Knew I sold my soul to the devil long ago. I wrote it all along on your wave right before it broke. Time was thrown down the well, so I let you go. What I do right now. What I do right now.
Well, Clubhouse went all the way into Sinister's favor, 7-3. LFO's draw streak is now being threatened as we head into Kafe. Fortunately, Dev, they at least picked Kafe, so they've got their hopes up going into this next round.
Yeah, and hey, last time these two teams played each other, LFO one map on Kafe. It was an overtime 8-6. Hey, maybe it'll happen again. They also played Clubhouse last time, and Sinister won that, so I mean, maybe we'll just see a repeat. It's possible, and that allows the LFO draw streak that I'm a huge fan of to continue. Who knows?
Look, you know, coming into this series, pumping up LFO's tires a little bit, I thought maybe there was a chance that draw streak would end in the opposite fashion with 2 wins. It was all dependent on how Clubhouse was going to go. That very evidently did not go in their way at all. And so Sinister taking that map, now they've got an opportunity to end that draw streak. You probably do feel like we are going to see LFO at least play a bit tighter to Sinister on this next map on Kafe. Of course, we have the poll vote that you guys entered at the beginning of the series. You were all pretty convinced that Sinister were going to win. Dev, they're looking pretty on the money right now with this 59%.
If the game continues to go as it did on Clubhouse, Sinister outclassing LFO, then yeah, I would definitely say Sinister's on the money. But that said, last week, or I guess 2 weeks ago, when LFO last played, they played both of these maps against Knights, and they lost Clubhouse 7-2, and they won Kafe 7-5. So I would not be surprised to see LFO come back stronger on Kafe, especially because last week when Sinister played Kafe, they were pushed against Kanga. I think it's pretty safe to say the weakest team in the league, all the way to overtime 8-7 and barely won that. So Sinister maybe not the best form on Kafe, LFO quite the opposite.
Well, it's their last chance for tonight for LFO to keep the draw streak alive. As we head into Kafe, Sinister looking to pick up a 2-0. It would definitely go a long way of increasing their chances of staying in the top 4, Dev, because they've only got one more play day to come, which is next week against Ferox.
Yep, still a lot of opportunity to move for these two teams, and heck of a lot on the line, especially for Sinister, currently sitting in 2nd place on the 6 Masters standings. And, well, a win here would leapfrog them into 1st place in the 6 Masters. Now, that is amazing coming from the trajectory these guys have been on throughout Pro League and 2020 in general. And on the flip side of things, LFO, the dark horses of 6 Masters, came in through that open qualifier, but still haven't managed to penetrate that top 4 spots that goes to playoffs. If they win this map, they will leapfrog over Elevate and get much, much closer to Okami as well.
Coming on to Kafe, some different bands coming out. Sledge, well, mine, not usually seeing those too often.
Very unusual.
The Mirror Streak's live, though.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like we just come to know LFO as the team that, like, if anyone is going to ban some weird operators, it's going to be them. And I'm just going to say that Wamai was played quite persistently by Sinister on that previous map on, I believe, all 3 bomb sites. I can't remember about Gym and Bedroom. And Sledge was also played by Nico to quite significant effect. Remembering that on this particular map, specifically for those kitchen defenses downstairs, that Sledge is super powerful, not only for opening up the floor inside of mining and fireplace and train to attack those players on site, eliminate those anchors, but also you've got those grenades, and we know when they're in the hands of Nico how powerful they are. So once again, some counter bans from LFO. I don't know how much that'll hamstring Sinister. We'll have to see how good they are at adapting on the fly.
Attackers need to locate and defuse bomb.
Well, we had the poll vote of the community dev. I want your vote going into this match of Kafe. I know you are a fan of the draw streak, but what's your gut saying? What's your mind saying as we head into Kafe? Because for me right now, I'm kind of backing in Sinister. Despite what recent match history says and how LFO perform on Kafe, the way that Sinister played on Clubhouse, they've had that extra week's game under their belt. It's hard to see past them.
Look, I totally concede. Sinister are looking in great form, especially after that last map. And what I was saying is they outclassed LFO on Clubhouse, and well, I think that is definitely accurate. They just look like a much more sophisticated team. And it could be that that continues on to Kafe, but once I remember that LFO played Kafe last week and did a great job taking out Knight 7-5, and Sinister played against Kanga, the weakest team in the league, last week, and only barely won 8-7. That really does give me some credence towards supporting LFO for Kafe here, especially as they picked this map. They knew going into tonight, this is where they would end up.
And Cocktail to start things off here for the first round of Kafe. If you've just joined us, Sinister took out Clubhouse 7-3, rather convincingly as well, both attack and defense. They are going to be on defense first here on Kafe. Baron Cocktail has had some mixed results this season of 6 Masters. Some cases, attackers have taken it quite easily. In other cases, defenders have been able to hold off the attackers with ease as well. So very much hard to get a read on this. Nico, though, a bit of an interesting roam.
Yeah, I mean, Nico is that player on these defenses from Sinister. Fairly unorthodox usages of the castle barricades to try and enable Milo to play in piano quite aggressively. And usually Nico's playing around the middle hallway downstairs near mining and looking up through that piano hatch to contest on those windows. But I think he was maybe going all the way downstairs to tempt a run out. He goes back though. Not doing so at the moment. And Milo, he's the player to really watch here, and in a very aggressive position in piano, but funnily enough, he doesn't play this position very aggressively typically, and it worked so well against Kanga when Milo simply sat in this corner where he can't get shot from any of the windows and just waited for the attackers to file in through all their utility and just delayed as much time as possible.
I believe we saw
a jump out.
A couple of weeks
He
ago
just jumped
against LFO as well from Knight. Moliska jumps out, gets the elimination onto Nasty. Detected, but he's going to get straight back into Bakery. I mean, that's one way to run out and get a kill. I'm not sure if
they're going to hunt
Nasty's
him down.
expecting that.
Attackers recover the
Oh, they don't have the information, though, to do that.
Attackers drop the diffuser.
No way! There you go.
Okay, now it's the
Finally,
right
that
way.
refrag comes out. Oh, man.
Device in position.
30 seconds left. This has been a very intriguing round. Not one that we normally would see play out in this manner. And we're going to push through Pixel. Just very much confirms that there's no one there. 20 seconds. And it's now down to a 4 versus 3, though, in favor of Sinister, considering the time on the clock. Not a lot of position in favor as well for LFO. This is going to be very difficult for them to achieve much here. Sogs is very low already, taking a lot of damage. As Nikos will finish him off, Angmo does trade back, but no time remaining. Diffuser's down, and the round's going to go the way of Sinister, and they pick up right where they left off from Clubhouse.
Really started off quite explosively. Milo just jumped straight on out those piano windows and peeked really aggressively onto Nasty. We saw nice on and early that it was actually Nico downstairs who was trying to get aggressive onto those players on the windows, but I guess Milo, once he realized that the attackers had pushed into Cigar, he notably saw those little players dropping through the hatch. There was that tiny little pixel angle above that reinforced wall in piano looking to top red. He saw those little drops. He knew how many people had gone downstairs. He knew that they had control of Cigar. He knew he was a dead man at that point. His rotation is cut off from those windows, and they're about to open the castle barricade and kill him from Cigar. So he has to either make a play or try and rotate back, which would probably die. So he goes for making a play, and it was a smart play, jumping out the window, and the player that he eliminated was the only hard breacher from LFO, Nasty, the Maverick. And taking out that player not only obviously furthers the mount count in his advantage, but it also meant that LFO had to abandon any idea of trying to open up the freezer wall and the backstore wall and really just focus on funneling through choke points, which so rarely favors the attackers.
I mean, Sogs was able to trade him back pretty quickly, not immediately. He was, as you mentioned, looking in the wrong direction, then turned around. He obviously would have just heard him running towards him, so did get the trade in the end. So it was, I guess, a 1-for-1, but as you said, taking out the hard breacher to the effect is that because LFO taking so long in the beginning of that round, it didn't leave them much time. When things got a bit chaotic, when things got a bit messy, which in my opinion, that whole round was actually quite messy, very different. You know, Nico roaming in bakery, not something you see too often. But in the end, goes the way of Sinister because it was only about 20 seconds left that when we saw Sogs start to push in and the rest of LFO try and sort of file in as well on Bar and Cocktail. So well played from Sinister. We'll see if that trend continues, of course, here on Kafe. But the way we saw them play on Clubhouse, they've kind of brought that mentality now to Kafe as well. For Sinister's sake, they just look up and about. LFO just a bit asleep right now.
The thing that confuses me most about LFO in that round is they knew going into today that they would be playing Kafe. No doubt, they had a week off last week. They would have watched Sinister's game knowing that they'd be playing Sinister and they were going to pick Kafe. So what do? You study the absolute heck out of Sinister's VOD of Kafe. And Milo just did the exact same thing that he was doing last week, playing in that position. And I really would have thought that LFO would have constructed some kind of counter strat to that specific pocket strategy that Sinister used. And the most obvious one I can think of is using Capitao, using his firebolts, playing from the windows, having someone cut off his rotation if he moves out of that position, and just firebolting into that corner. We know how much LFO likes to bring the Capitao. They brought it was Ungmo previously on Clubhouse, so I don't understand why they wouldn't do that here. And I have two possible ideas. One, either they didn't analyze the VOD well enough and didn't locate that strategy and develop a counter strat to it. Or two, they just got so tunnel visioned on something else in the round that all of their prep went out the window. And that's just very uncharacteristic of LFO, the team that we know so typically is characterized for their counter strategy.
How does LFO get back into this series now? You've lost the first map. You've now lost the first opening round on Kafe. I know you don't want to take too much into it. You know, it's only one round on Kafe. We still got a lot more that we need to see from LFO's attack and then potentially their defense as well then after that. But to me, the LFO that we saw last time out, I was going to say last week, I've got to change that. 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh's Knights, that, you know, they split that, but they looked really good. And even though they didn't take that second map on Clubhouse, which again was a bit of their weaker map, they still played a bit better than what we saw from them tonight. And it almost just feels like I'm waiting for LFO to arrive. I'm waiting for LFO to just pick up a bit and start to frag out. We saw them on Clubhouse get a bit aggressive. There was almost a bit of a comeback. And I was thinking maybe then they're sort of perked up and ready to go here to go into Kafe. Only one round, but still messy, not clean. And we've seen that Bar and Cocktail is quite vulnerable.
Yes, very much so. That's a great point, actually, you make. We talked in previous Six Masters weeks about Bar Cocktail. What was typically the most favored bomb site was actually becoming the worst result bomb site, the least defensible, and more teams were winning on their attack than their defense. And then we saw a trend of almost no picks on Bar Cocktail at all, which was strange. But Sinister, they've developed this new and unusual strategy of keeping Milo in that dark corner near the Christmas tree, between the Christmas tree and the minibar in Piano, where he can't get shot from any windows. And that seems to work really well against Kanga last week. Sinister are keeping on with using that strategy. LFO haven't developed a counter to it. And I'm going to reinforce that. LFO, like their Capitao, Ungmo plays it all the time. Wamai is banned. There is literally no utility that can prevent those firebolts from landing on the floor there. Why not bring the Capitao, force Milo out of that position, and then cut him off as he tries to rotate out? A bit of an oversight there from LFO. I know I am being a bit hypercritical here. I don't know what's happening in their coaching sessions. I don't know what's happening in their VOD reviews, but I feel like there is an opportunity there, and I would love to see later in this game when Sinister returns to that top floor for that Capitao to come out on Ungmo and to see that adaptation counter what Sinister's brought to the table.
Well, we mentioned Bar and Cocktail has been vulnerable. I was going to say that Reading and Fireplace has usually sort of been, now at least in this season of Six Masters, the harder site to take. And yeah, we're going to see Sinister take us down to Kitchen, Service and Cooking, and see what they can cook up for us here. We've got to get those kitchen puns going, Dev. Come on.
Like it, yeah. Well, I mean, LFO have been in the frying pan. Maybe Sinister's going to put him in the fire.
Oh,
A couple are in. Yeah, well, I like that one, yeah. Kind of a twist on the whole add the frying pan into the fire. Love that. Sinister looking to have some kind of presence upstairs. Fisher guy on the Valkyrie. LFO Bandit on map number 1. No doubt there will be a few Valkyrie cameras placed on that second floor
10 seconds
to enable Sinister to go for those C4s through the floor and attack any of those LFO players who might be trying to mince up that floor. We're really going to be looking at Sogs and Hills who have breaching charges in their pocket to open up the floor inside of Fireplace and Train and Mining, where we typically see the attackers do when they're going for that map control take. But we actually have mute jammers as well from Derpe and a bit of an aggressive roam from Milo, which is potentially going to stall out this LFO roam clear and mean that they have even less time to open up that floor and find those anchors.
I'm intrigued to see where Milo is going to finish his roam, though. Because if you, I guess, push into Train, it's very hard to push out of it. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him just take a few shots, make his way back down red stairs, as it looks like that's what he may elect to do. Holding that second floor in terms of roamers, very difficult to then drop back down to, say, first floor.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that Sinister's mentality here is, look, they did it on Clubhouse. Put that information and I'll use those mute jammers and make it so it takes a little bit longer for LFO to clear the map. And then what do? Just don't care about roaming at all. Or go back to site. LFO is going to waste a lot of time clearing the map. Made decent control so far. Ungmo's already pushed on nicely down towards the hallway. 90. Mims and Nasty together droning out down to bottom white stairs. Ungmo with the Nomad can place those air jabs nicely. I think I just heard a Valkyrie camera get taken out by Hills, so that's a nice little bit of work there. And you see these breaching charges get employed by Sogs to try to open up the floor and expose these anchors. Do we see any successful C4s from Sinister though?
So far, only the breaching charges used. No C4s just yet. Still a minute remaining, but never mind. There's one from Nico. There's a successful one for you, Dev. You call it. As
you know, it's kind of
with a minute
ironic
remaining,
there.
I was expecting to see them start to throw them out. That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
Perfectly timed from Nico.
I was just going to say, it's kind of ironic that it's the IQ who dies first, and it's the information gathering on that Valkyrie camera we were spectating that no doubt would help with these kinds of C4 plays. So Hills can't find that Valkyrie camera any longer, and LFO are just going to have to deal with that. Sinister have a lot of tools still in their arsenal, and time is ticking.
30 seconds to be exact as he starts to break down this wall. BB5 is going to make it very difficult for LFO. We had seen them at one point turn a 3v5 disadvantage into a 3 versus 2 advantage over on Clubhouse. That's not going to be the same case here as the trades come out back and forth over in kitchen service. Nasty's going to go for the plant. Doesn't even get it down as Fisher guy will flush him out of the kitchen. 2 rounds in a row to Sinister. 9-3 technically now over the course of the 2 maps. It's all one-sided tonight.
Well, Sinister has certainly been giving LFO a hard time here on map number 2. Untouchable on their defenses thus far, and they'll head to Reading Fireplace, their 3rd defense. Not only did Sinister find the opening pick with that C4 through the floor, but by the time LFO started to go for what their intention was, that rotate to Bakery and open up that front wall into the kitchen from using that Maverick torch, I mean, there were no picks from the side of LFO, and Sinister really had that numbers advantage overwhelmingly in their favor. And there was no time for LFO to try to get it back.
I wager, though, that we're going to see 3-0 to Sinister. LFO have got a task ahead of them here on the second floor, which has been, I don't want to say impenetrable, Dev, but just about this season of Six Masters.
Yeah, there's definitely a good opportunity here for Sinister to really run away with this first half. Do remember, though, that we have Sledge and Thatcher banned out, both very strong operators for the attack, and maybe we see a bit of a slide towards the defense being favored here. Another good Valkyrie camera placed by Hills. Notably, Echo has not... he's managed to escape this ban phase, and as such, we did see Vinny bring it last round, so that puts even more pressure on this IQ player. Not only does Hills have to worry about those Valkyrie cameras, any potential mute jammers, Legion mines, etc., but also those Echo drones as well, which are really just almost impossible to find without the IQ.
Not really too much of a surprise setup from Sinister so far. Bit of a presence over in Cocktail. And then just fall straight back down with Sears there. But there is 3 roaming around. Derpe just wants to maybe lurk around Pixel. Moloska lurking around White Stairs as Vince is obviously holding out and will provide the defensive fortitude over in Cocktail. This is very aggressive actually from Sinister, but it buys so much time. And LFO are going to find it very difficult to push in with a lot of time remaining. By the time they clear this 3rd floor, there's only going to be seconds remaining, and not like 5 seconds, but probably something like 40 seconds or so, Dev.
And that's exactly what happened last round. By the time LFO cleared the map and started to rotate towards Bakery, just 30 seconds left. Not sure where that firebolt from the Capital went off. I think that was at Pixel. And the Nomad air jab. There you go. So Derpe fully flushed off of this position, and White can start to be pressured by LFO, but you've got to go a lot further than that, mate. It's Cocktail that's really the big business.
And it's like taking a bomb site in itself, though, Cocktail.
Oh, yeah.
By the time you get to it, it's as if you're ready to plant. Moloska then just falls down, gets away for free. It's becoming a very common theme on Kafe, on these reading and fireplaces, and that's just what adds to the effect that makes that 2nd floor site just so difficult to take as the attackers.
Not to mention, there are still a few gas babes left in the pocket. Milo sends out his penultimate one. He's got 1 more left. Might use that to flush out Pixel and allow him to get downstairs. But Fish Show, that through the floor must have been. That's the last gas taken out. Nico finds one as well. LFO just falling apart here, all on Nasty and Hills against 5 Sinister players.
Didn't even get to the point of having to fall back. Moloska, though, continued to push forward. Does get punished by Hills. You don't want to just start throwing everything forward as Nasty opens up the wall. Then, well, Hills finds Vince. Nasty can continue to put pressure onto this bomb site now as well. This may just turn into the favor of LFO.
Drop the bomb diffuser.
Or not.
Good nades, but no cigar yet, and there you go. Close out from Sinister. It started very strongly. 3 picks all in their favor, and really it didn't let up from there. There was maybe a bit of a glimpse of hope there for Nasty, but nothing that you can take to the bank.
3-0, Dev. I think really now the series is running away from LFO. Clubhouse got out of hand. They lost too many rounds too quickly and too many in a row, and it's a trend that has now taken place here on Kafe as well. And really, there's not an excuse. It's not like, oh, you know, this is really defender-sided. You know, they're going to turn around on defense. Well, we've seen in the last few weeks, really, actually, this entire season of 6 Masters, it's 50-50 here. A lot of teams have dominated the attack of Kafe. Back to Bar and Cocktail, which, if they don't win this round, I'm almost ready to call it and say that draw streak's over.
I gotta agree with you there, and especially because Sinister seem to be, for the most part, doing the same kind of strategy, bringing that castle. Milo setting up ADSs inside of Piano, so he'll likely play in that dark corner in between Christmas Tree and the half bar. And I was really hoping we'd see the Capital used to counter that, similar to how it was used to counter the position at Pixel in the previous round when Mims brought it. But no Capital taken at all. The Nomad's still present. The Hibana removed. Sog's going to switch onto the Ash instead, but I really don't know what the idea here is from LFO to clear Milo from that position. Because it's not even like once you kill him, that's the entire round gone. It's just step 1. So you need to get it away, get it done nice and quickly. If you have a hard counter like the firebolts from Capital, just do it. Just finish it off, start taking control and moving on from there. But I don't see this working. They're going to have to waste these ADSs using flashbangs and then try to flush them out using a grenade, for which they only have the 2 on Nasty, and he really needs to be alive into the late round, and we know that as soon as LFO find that, Sinister find that pick onto the hard breacher, it just eliminates so many more options for LFO.
Nasty just took a big chunk of damage as well. And he's meant to be that sort of protected property, as you were saying. And this is going to slow LFO down even further. As the diffuser in hand as well. It hasn't been easy going for Nasty on Kafe. I mean, it hasn't really been easy going for LFO on Kafe. Or Clubhouse for that matter. Droned in, down immediately.
Oh no.
Try and just clear out the ADS as Molosca's still holding that aggressive position over at Piano Stage. Now pushes over to the window. And they've just dropped in, if I saw it correctly. May not have, though. Fisho Guy does get heals. And this is proving to be an uphill battle now for LFO in this 4th round of Kafe.
Finally, Milo gets injured, though. But Fisher Guy's still aggressive here. I think that was Nasty's 2nd grenade used to take that out, but Nico jumps out from the fireplace window and trades Sogs. Milo, he might not be dead, but LFO have no idea he's injured unless they got a drone in there, and I don't think they did. Really struggling to see LFO come back from this, even though they have that pick. Milo no doubt going to bleed out, and there you go. But 4 versus 3, and Fisher Guy keen with this rifle, rather the shotgun. Eliminated though. Good start for Ungmo. Now it's a 3v3.
Now it's a possibility. Done the work to get to this point, but still a minute on the clock. So really, if you look at it as a positive for LFO, plenty of time. Don't have to rush this, but as a negative, there was plenty of time then for Sinister to just fall back a bit if they needed to. Oh, Vince, just quick little peek above the shield, and Pixel finds it, makes it 3 versus 2. Goes for a second pre-fire. This time doesn't find the target that he was looking for. Nasty, of course, has been sort of playing back a bit this time. He does find Vince, though, over at Pixel. 2 versus 2, but Nasty is injured as that return trade did come out. Luckily, Ungmo is able to shoot straight through the wall, gets Nico, and they've got vision, though. But Derpe, all blaze lonesome. This is 1 versus 1. Nasty injured.
10 seconds left.
Big chance for LFO. It's their best chance they've had. Goes for the plant.
5
And we
seconds
see
left.
how it plays out from here. Derpe trying to find the information. He's got it. Oh, he stops it at the last second as well. Sinister win the round. LFO just can't take a trick.
No chance at all for LFO. They really started strong for Sinister, opening picks in abundance, but somehow LFO managed to claw it back just closely. And I mean, I'm impressed it got to that 1v1, but when the Echo is the last player alive and Derpe wasn't even playing at Cocktail, maybe if he was on the bomb site, there would have been an opportunity for Ungmo to go find him, hunt him down, and take him out. But Derpe was just sitting safely downstairs. I don't know whether exactly it was in reading or in the hallway of pillars, but either way, he can sit safely on his yokai drones. Got 2 of them. Either of them can deny plant. That's exactly what happened, and the defenders win on time. 4 straight rounds, Jake, and I don't know how LFO is going to go getting even a glimpse of this game.
Feels like you're now starting to turn a tide here, Dev, and join my way of thinking for how the series is going to go. The dark side. The Sinister side. That's really what it is right now, because it's just one-way traffic. As we go down to the first floor, kitchen and service and cooking. And for LFO, well, they've been just about thrown in the trash right now.
10 seconds remaining. 5 seconds.
Be it individual plays from Sinister, such as Fisher Guy going nuts, Nico jumping out windows, Milo delaying time, or just overall strategies. Sinister just seem to be more proficient at everything than LFO. And you can see the confidence from Fisher Guy to place his Valkyrie cameras in such exposed positions, because previously Hills wasn't able to take him out. Now it looks like now LFO is going to completely bypass that map control take, at least for now, and primarily focus on pushing in through Bakery. so they can open up these main walls. Now the Nomad will help this by denying aggressive pushes up through small bakery and prep here. But typically, that map control is so instrumental to the attack, and if LFO don't challenge it, Dirtbay, who's on the roam at the moment, can open up vertical holes to his own advantage.
And I'll just say that it's very much looking like Sinister's going to take this map as well. And if that does become the case, at least for a moment in time, they will occupy first place on the standings, in which it feels like Wildcard has been up there all season. Of course, it helps that they've played an extra series, Dev, but we don't worry about that.
It's possible that Wildcard could just jump back over Sinister once they finally get some extra games on the board. But, I mean, you've got to credit Sinister. The fact that they were within an arm's reach of being first place on the standings, what a nade there. And Vincia is taking out the Echo no less. We've seen how impactful those Yokai drones can be. Perfect grenades from Nasty, as well as a drone from the rest of the team to find that position. Really excellent work. And it looks like potentially now in a 5 versus 3, this bakery take is possible.
Nasty's going to go for the plant down. There's a trade out. No, doesn't mind. It was stopped completely. 5 versus 1. Fisho guys the 1. A very unlikely one to win this. Immediately wall-banged. Flawless round for LFO. Their best round all of tonight.
They finally did it. They got that plant down. They just completely abandoned what I was saying they should do and go for map control. They just went through bakery. Used that Nomad to just bite off the...
Bite off the, I don't know what we're biting off exactly, but...
Oh, I may have tapped my mouse and muted my mic while I was mid-sentence, but I was in the middle of making an analogy.
You left us all hanging now. What are we biting off?
My mic. I bit off my mic, I think. No, what I was saying is LFO adopted the strategy of trying not to bite off more than they can chew. And instead of going for full map control, which Sinister was happy to play into, LFO just prioritized getting the minimum amount of ground that they needed to get that plant down. And it works so well for them. Just go straight for bakery, use the Nomad air jabs to prevent any kind of aggression. And it helps that Nasty got to nade that Echo out of existence. And from there on, it wasn't too difficult to plant there.
Well, this is going to be difficult, though.
10 seconds left before
Back down to that second floor, reading fireplace. And how convincing it was for Sinister to hold this last time around. They'll get it for their final defense here on Kafe. They make it 1-5. Very unlikely for LFO to then come back on their defense. Be very surprised if LFO can take this site, but if they can, Dev, it does mean they can take a lot of confidence going into their defensive half.
Very much so, and even a 4-2 here has got to be a good position for Sinister going into their attacks. So the pressure is absolutely on LFO. They finally got a look in, and I mean, let's take a look, and taking into account Clubhouse as well, that previous round was the first time in 6 rounds LFO had finally had success and struck a round in their column. Now attacking Reading and Fireplace. They stalled out last time. Can they do any better and actually successfully take control of Cocktail? That's a nice way to kick things off for Angmo. Taking out the player at Pixel, it's Derpe. So already things looking up.
Well, they need to be looking down soon, though. Once they can take control of Cocktail. At least they've been able to push past towards Pixel a lot sooner than they did in the previous round that it was Reading and Fireplace. Buys a lot of time for Hills to clear out any gadgets. They can push into washrooms now to try and avoid that white corridor. The stairs you can see Vincia. So Sogs can at least get a different angle, a different entryway and pathway opened up towards Cocktail. Mosca has dropped down and they've given up on that 3rd floor.
It's always a bit of a gamble. How long do you stay upstairs? But Molosco deciding to... I think he's actually all out of... I don't know whether he used his smoke babes. He actually has one still in the pocket. So he held on as long as he thought possible. But now he can deny these pushes with his last gas grenades. Once finally LFO do take control of Cocktail, he can prevent them from getting aggressive down White Stairs with that last gas. But LFO, the question is how well can they use this vertical positions now to take out the Sinister players? Because Sinister, even though they're in that numbers deficit, they can just play in more safer positions, such as we have from Molosco, not exposed to the floor above him. And it's really on Sinister, rather LFO, to get some more work done.
Yeah, Molosco's the one that they need to take out. They can clear out White Stairs. This is the push coming through. Oh, he looks away at the wrong time. Looks back, but not quick enough. Hills will be able to win that one, although it was very close. Almost a trade. Oh, did he just see him through the floorboards? I think he may have. But he had the IQ scanner out rather than his gun, and that allowed Fisho Guy to keep moving forward a bit. They all just dropped down. Hopefully they all don't just fall in it utterly at the same time. No, guys, that's not how it's done. Fortunately, they get him, but maybe has the damage been done? Hills is very low. Angmo's injured. Hills on 1 HP. He's going to go for the plant. As we see Nico look to finish this round off, to finish this half off. Nico will take out Angmo. Sogs is injured. Hills is the last one standing no more. And that will be the round. A very messy round, but Sinister will also then take the half, 5-1.
Defenders disabled the defender.
What was that, Xenox? What was that? I mean, Fisho Guy, the last man to hold the reading doorway. I mean, he was an unfortunate moment for Milo, but really, watching Fisho here take out two of those players was so essential. The fact that he got that second injure, and the fact that Hills was so low on HP from that earlier engagement really made this possible here for Sinister on the retake. And I mean, man, it was just so intense that it got down to that 1 versus 1, but Sinister have got to be pretty happy with how they're tracking to close out this series 2-0.
Not just the series, Dev, but the closeout, potentially the season going into next week. They're taking on Ferox. No disrespect to Ferox, but Sinister would back themselves in to win that series. At the very least, draw it and take a map, which now is a very likely 2-0 coming into tonight. They then get one more next week. You'd think it's all but almost certain that they find themselves a top 4 position. Of course, a lot of games still to be played elsewhere. You've got the Playday 10 to be played still, of course, as well on the 11th of June. But Sinister, this was the test for them tonight. And so far, they're passing it with flying colors.
Very much so. Sinister looking red hot and ready to go here for Six Masters. And I'm sure they are eagerly awaiting that first place on the standings, even if they can't stay there for long. But remember here that, as you said, Sinister, they've actually played their hardest games of the season already. And they've just got LFO here and then Ferox to go. Whereas the teams that they're going to be most worried about are the likes of Wildcard, Elevate. Whoa, it's a rush! I'm sorry, what, Sinister? You really want to go for it? Yes, they do. That's map control. That's site control. It's all on nasty, and I mean, goodness, things have got nasty here. 3 versus 1. What can you do? Absolutely nothing. That's match point for Sinister.
You blink and you miss it, I guess. I mean, that's the only thing I can really say. They walked in, they got some frags, they walked out with the round win, and they are now potentially about to walk out of this series with a 2-0. And not just a 2-0, Dev, but a commanding 2-0. 7-3 on Clubhouse, and what's now very likely to be 7-1 with how this has transpired on Kafe. Of course, recall, this is the map pick of LFO. It has gone upside down, topsy-turvy, all kinds of ways of messed up for LFO here on Kafe tonight.
Yeah, just think of some kind of metaphor for messed up. That's exactly what, any metaphor, anything. Just that's what's happened here. 7-1 is on the cards here for the Sinister. And I mean, just to go back to what I had to rudely interrupt myself while I was saying, Sinister, I mean, it's pretty safe here that they're probably going to take this against LFO unless we see one of the most maddest reverse sweeps ever. So then going into next week, their only remaining game in the Six Masters is Ferox. I think they're going to be backing themselves to get the full 6 points in that match. And compared to their competitors who are really gunning for those top 4 spots, we're talking Wildcard, Elevate, Okami. Those teams all have not played each other yet. Sinister, their toughest games are behind them. But for their competitors, the other teams gunning for that first spot in the standings and those top 4 for playoffs, I mean, Sinister, they're just looking so good right now, and I think they can take it all the way.
Attackers are moving to defuse a bomb.
Well, I definitely think they could take it all the way. There's only one more way to go, and that's one more round win. And LFO are all sitting on kitchen, maybe anticipating yet another rush. I'm not sure if Sinister are planning for the same strategy 2 rounds in a row, but it puts the doubt into the mind of LFO that if you're expecting it even slightly, you've got to play to that expectation, and that's potentially the way that they're going to do it here. Not messing about on second floor at all, although typically it's not too unsurprising to see a 5-man hold in that first floor and kitchen.
And to think of the air of confidence Sinister are emanating at the moment to storm through with a rush on your first attack round and take it with only losing 2 players. And now you're putting your opponents in a position backed up into a corner. LFO doubting themselves, no doubt, right now. Just trying to hold on, and it's a long run back to overtime. And when does the doubt set in for LFO here? Sinister just seem too good to dominate.
And that's, look, I've said it once before and I'll say it again. That's to the credit of LFO that they created these expectations going into the second half of this season based off their first half performances. This has undoubtedly been their worst performance, though, their worst night of seed this season of Six Masters. Because we mentioned the draw streak, that's now very likely to be over unless they can have an amazing comeback from this position. Very much doubt it, because to the credit of Sinister, they just look unbeatable right now.
Just going to have keeping an eye here. This is how Sinister like to deal with the Electroclaw on this hatch. As Thatcher is banned, they use a grenade banked on that cabinet. And I like the way LFO has tried to counter that, putting an ADS there. Oh, no, surely that... Oh, it did get it. There you go. Did get the Electroclaw, and now the hatch can be open. But I like the counter there from LFO to put an ADS there, chew up that nade, but it didn't make the full difference. Ooh, good 2 picks from Sog. Surely there's a refrag here for the 3rd one. Doesn't get too aggressive onto Dirtbear. Takes out Milo. Is he good for 4? Scares off Dirt. Way back up the stairs. Angmo on the Jaeger's now ready to support him as well. Could be some kind of a redemption here for LFO.
Hills goes down. It's very tricky, though, for LFO. You can't get excited with what's taken place so far. We saw them on Clubhouse where they picked up 2 rounds towards the end to make it 7-3. Well, I think it was 1 round towards the end. They almost made it 7-4, but that was lost pretty quickly. Well, they win this round, but it's hard to get excited for them, Dev.
Hey, there's only one way to go from here for LFO, and I mean, that's upwards, right? You can either lose or you can start to claw away rounds one at a time. And even if a win, an outright victory for LFO isn't on the cards here, every single round that they win back, there's not only a redemption for them, and a little bit more pride that they can salvage out of this series. But on top of that, that round differential also can come into play if there's a tiebreaker. And with how close the teams have been on the standings, I wouldn't be surprised if LFO ends the season on the same number of points as another team. And we may see that round differential come into factor to break that tie.
Well, I said it on Clubhouse. The only way to win it back from here is 1 round at a time. It's exactly what needs to be done, but it didn't work in Clubhouse. Not sure if that's going to work here on Kafe. Bar and Cocktail. But LFO, Dev, they can only just try now. That's all they can really do. Give it a crack. Unfortunately for them, this is also their final couple of rounds for the night. Fortunately, they will get to play next week, though.
And yeah, I mean, LFO, they still have a few games in the bag. We're talking about how Sinister just have Ferox left to play after this one, but LFO are also yet to play Kanga, And we talked to Enigma before the game tonight. He's backing himself to win both of those series 2-0. Sogs misses that drone there, unfortunate. I think the story that we're talking about right now is Sinister, and they've just been on fire tonight and throughout this season of Six Masters. As we come to the back half of this season, nearly coming to a close, Sinister have got to be proud of what they've achieved. And once they can lock out this map, they'll be feeling pretty good about themselves.
Well, you mentioned that with Enigma, though, but he also mentioned how they were anticipating, at the very least, a 1-1 here tonight against Sinister. And, I mean, you wouldn't have put it past him, really, considering their history and the amount of times you brought up the fact that they play really well on Kafe. Well, this was certainly a night off for them, and definitely does mean, I think, for their chances to then make top 4, they probably have no choice but to 2-0 Kanga, and then in their last matchup will be against Ferox to then 2-0 Ferox, which very well Ferox might be then fighting for top 4 as well going into that series, depending on how their matches play out before the hand.
There's definitely still a lot of moving parts. Ooh, it takes a lot of damage there. Backs off of that position at Pixel. The Sinister have made really good time here. Less than half the round done, and that's full control of Piano. Ooh, unfortunately, Fisher misses that shield somehow. Flashbangs go out. I think that's also one of the Mozzie Pest hacked drones that was shot there. Nade's going to chew up that shield nicely. And Fisher is just on flank watch duty. Gonna place a Claymore down, I believe, to prevent any kind of push-up aggressively. And Derp gets to work on this wall.
It's hard now, though, because Angmo being so low health, it's very difficult for him to sort of hold an angle. One tap, he'll go down. Up to Nasty to try and delay for as long as possible. Derpe's just going to make his way in anyway. Doesn't delay him for very long. Definitely can't peek for Pixel, though. That's being pretty much watched like a hawk from Fisher guy. Behind Derpe, Vince is going to get Angmo, like I said. Really didn't have to take too much for him to go down. 40 seconds remaining. Not a lot opened up. There is a bit, but not too much. 4 versus 4 now. There's the trade from Mims. Fortunately for LFO. Can they get any more? They get Moloska pretty low. Half health. Nico, though, gets Mims back, who was shooting and being aggressive. 25 seconds remaining. Is this the end of LFO for tonight? We're about to find out.
Numbers advantage squarely in their favor. Couple players taking some damage on their side, but just 15 seconds left. Spots out one player on the cocktail. Hills finds the pick onto Milo, but still numbers advantage for Sinister. How can they progress from this point? For LFO, can they keep the dream alive? One player goes down, all on Hills. Plant goes down, and Fisher guy closes this map. Sinister take first place in the Six Masters standings with a convincing 2-0 victory over LFO.
Well, what can I say, Dev? LFO were put to the sword on Clubhouse, and then subsequently they were sliced apart on Kafe. And as you said, 2-0 to Sinister, top of the standings, at least for the time being. Of course, a game in hand over Wildcard. Wildcard have got technically 2 series to play, but impressively enough, this draw streak is over. No more draw for LFO, but on the wrong side of where you'd want that draw streak to finish.
Yeah, a bit of a moment for LFO. They have been so good this season. They've taken the fight to these best teams that we've seen from the ANZ region. Teams like Wildcard, Elevate, Akami, who we know are mainstays for top 4. But at the moment, there is a new contender who has risen, and that is Sinister, sitting at first place on the Six Masters standings and getting there with no mean feat. They have taken some incredibly strong performances, and I think tonight was just an epitome of that. Absolutely manhandling LFO on not only Clubhouse, but also LFO's own map pick of Kafe. A much better performance than Sinister last week against Kanga on the same map, and I think that they're just going to continue this streak all the way to the end of Six Masters.
Yep, I definitely would agree with you. I think their chances now of making top 4 isn't sealed. It's not locked in. It's not 100%. We can't probably go to that degree. But one more, say one more map next week against Ferox. You take that first map, and I'd say that should very well do it. What would that put them on, like 27 points, if I'm correct?
I think that to note as well, Sinister, at the moment, they're not just got their eyes on top 4. Surely they've got their eyes on that top 1 spot. Now that they can taste it, now that they're sitting there, at least for now, I think that they want to go all the way, and I think it's definitely possible. Sinister have only lost 4 maps so far in 6 Masters, and they have been to Okami, Elevate, and then 2 to Wild Cards. So only for those really top big dog teams have they even faltered. And that's not so much that teams like Elevate and Wild Card and even Okami can boast. So Sinister have definitely primed and ready and in a position to take that #1 spot for good in 6 Masters.
What about LFO and sort of where their season now lies, Dev? They've got 2 more matches to be played over the next week. Obviously, we've spoken about it. They've got Kanga coming up next week, and then technically, 2 days after that, they will then be playing again against Ferox. I think to give them the benefit, the way that they've played this season, you definitely favor them in both of those matchups, but I think for LFO's sake now going forward, Dev, it's definitely going to be a matter of having to win those matches. Now, we do have our first interview of the night up and ready. It's going to be Enigma, who had some choice words. Enigma, buddy, not the way you probably envisioned tonight to go. You thought potentially 1-1. You wanted that 2-0. In the end, the draw streak's over.
Yeah, unfortunately so, but I think it's actually a very good thing that the team had that. At some point, it had to, it had to happen, and all teams need to learn how to be able to bounce back from a defeat. And credit to Sinister, they played exceptionally well, and completely just stomped us. But at the end of the day, yeah, we just take what we learned from that game, and we got to just bounce back next week, just being resilient about it.
Now, I want to pick your brain a little bit, Enigma, specifically on Kafe. That pick, you guys picked that map. You guys have won it in the past. So have Sinister. You guys have quite a lot of VODs as well to go off. You probably had seen Sinister with that aggressive hold inside of Piano where Milo sits around the Christmas tree dancing between stage and minibar. But there didn't seem to be like a perfect solution to that for you guys. What was your thought process in that, and how did you encounter that in the game?
Well, because obviously, I'm hearing comms and then I'm watching what I'm seeing. But what I'm hearing is just a lack of communication from the team. Well, we know you are completely right. We knew exactly what they were going to do, just like on Clubhouse as well, because we anticipated they were going to take us there, and we had an idea that they were going to be playing in a certain way. But from what I was listening to the team, we just weren't really firing ourselves up and really pushing ourselves to play as a team. We were, as you could see, individually all playing around everywhere, and it just wasn't the way we usually play. And unfortunately, it's been our worst series of 6 Masters, but at the same time too, as I said, you can always take learning points away from this, and that's the most important thing that we can do from tonight. So it is what it is.
Enigma, you guys unfortunately lose that draw streak. As you said, it's good to learn, I guess, from a loss in the end. But moving forward now into your next matchups, you've got Kanga, and then of course you've got Ferox. That wasn't played as well. You feel comfortable going into those matchups and feeling like, okay, we can bounce back here, pick up those wins, and give ourselves still a very big chance of making top 4.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said to you guys, I think last time I spoke, if I don't believe in my team, then I shouldn't be there in the first place. Again, I will keep going back no matter what. I'll always back my team. So I believe that we can take, both maps of both teams. But at the same time too, we can't disrespect them, and we can't just say that we're going to do it. No, we need to work hard for it, because tonight is a clear indication that we didn't work hard enough for it, and Sinister did. And consequently, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board and really just work it out for next week. And hopefully, we'll have our first game. Hopefully win that one, then after the next, have our next game after that. It's just hard work, but I think the boys can handle it, and so can I.
Thanks for your time, Enigma. Best of luck in both your matches next week.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, guys. See you guys later.
Yep. Always humble, both in victory and defeat, is the lovely Enigma. Always the lovely new suit as well. But look, he is correct. And of course, he's always got to believe in his team. Beforehand, he thought 2-0, very likely he could have got that, or they could have got that against Sinister. 1-1 was also in the cards of where they were thinking the series might go. In the end, you do suffer that defeat. You do have to learn from it.
Yeah, and the thing that always strikes me when we talk to Enigma is he's ever so humble. as you mentioned, and always looking to find a solution to the problems, identifying the problems. He talked about the communication issues, particularly with dealing with some of the things that Sinister, I mean, they knew Sinister were going to do those things. They knew that those setups were going to happen, but they just, when it got into game, when they jumped into the server, there was something a little bit short. And the fact that Enigma knows that, and the fact that LFO are well aware of the things that are holding them back from being in the top 4 at the moment, that's what's going to enable them to strive for and start to take a shot at those top 4 spots for playoffs.
Yeah, and I agree. And I mean, look, while he's been respectful to Kanga and maybe to a degree Ferox as well, the chances for LFO to win, I think a 2-0 in both of those is very strong. So the draw streak may have ended 0-2 for them this week, but they might then find their first 2-0 next week. We do have our next interview, of course, from the winning team. It is Milo from Sinister.
How you doing,
Firstly,
boys?
I love the shades. I love that. You've got to be feeling extremely happy with the win, not just the win itself, but also how you guys won that.
Oh, I'm pretty happy with the result, to be honest. I ain't gonna lie. Pretty happy with it.
Can I just, before I ask my questions, can I just say, mate, you did the rehearsal for this interview in like a tiny little singlet, and now you come in with, I mean, it's full suit, the sunnies. I mean, mate, you look like a man who means business, and I think you've shown that tonight. How does it feel to be first place in Six Masters?
I think I'm pretty happy with that, TBH. Ain't gonna lie. I'm actually pretty happy with that, yeah. That's all I can say.
I'll try and ask you maybe a bit of a serious question here. I just want to ask about that rush on Kitchen. It was like what, round 6 or 7? What was sort of what was the plan? How did you guys just think, oh, we're just going to rush it? Was this something that was pre-planned maybe before the series?
Oh, of course. So Sinister, we've been obviously, we're a team. We like to play together. We're playing a lot of ranked, so we've been perfecting our rush strats quite a lot as well. And we identified in our pod review not too long ago that they are susceptible to rushes, so we came pretty handy prepared. We were holding nothing back.
I love it. I love the confidence, and I think you guys will probably be confident going into next week against Ferox as well. Thanks a lot for your time, mate.
No worries, man. Thanks for the interview.
No worries. Very dapper looking Milo tonight. Very different to how we last saw him before the broadcast as well.
It's just a full 180. He was fully, casual, and like I said, he was literally wearing a singlet. And then, game face, absolutely wiped clean, like he did with the floor for LFO. And I mean, man, one more match, one more series is remaining for Sinister, and they're very close to not just keeping themselves and getting to that first space in Six Masters, but locking it in and really sending it home. I think they can do it, and I can't wait for their game next week.
Well, Milo was cool, calm, and collected, so was Sinister in that matchup against LFO, taking it 2-0, breaking the draw streak. We're going to go to a break, but on the other side, it's going to be a Kami and Pittsburgh Knights. Don't want to miss it.
Please hold. Your call is very important to us. All operators are busy at this time.